Hey, everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to episode 99 of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. Now, my intro music isn't playing, the little theme song didn't go. Well, it's because in all the preparation for episode 100, also on top of those things, last episode didn't come out on Thursday. It was supposed to. Episode 99, this episode, was supposed to be out last Thursday and the Thursday before it. But my assistant screwed something up in the excitement of developing the Patreon page and the excitement of editing and bringing together episode 100, which, spoiler alert, is amazing. So I'm going to have to fire my assistant, which leads me to a really, really big problem. I am my assistant. Yeah, it was me. I messed it up. But you know what? We're back now, and we're doing a pretty much a live episode. I'm pretty much doing this episode and uploading it, and no editing. We're just gonna go through. We're gonna see what comes out. I don't even know what I'm gonna talk about. I'm just kidding. I know what I'm gonna talk about. So I don't know. Should I give you guys a spoiler on episode 100? Should I do it? I don't know. Should I? Yeah. You know what? If you're listening to episode 99, you're not just sitting and saying, "Oh man, I bet episode 99 is just a filler and it sucks." I'll tell you guys. I'm going to give you guys the inside scoop on who I got for episode 100. So I feel like a lot of people probably guessed, especially if they live in the area that I live in St. Louis area. They have kind of a guess who I've always talked about having on the show, but have never been able to nail him down. It is John Thomas. If you guys don't know who John Thomas is, look up John Thomas BJJ. I would argue that in the gi, I would say in the gi, there is no one who has a deeper understanding of most guards and guard passing than John Thomas. And also his ways of training, his ways of getting good at jiu-jitsu and training people are top notch. I just don't think that there are not many people that compare to him. I won't dig too deep into that episode because we're still in episode 99. And honestly, I think it should be a really good episode as long as I don't ramble too much like I'm doing right now. So we've done 99 episodes, and I've got bad news for you guys. Just the bearer of all the bad news today. I decided to retire the finishing question of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. How do you suck less at Jiu-Jitsu? I'm not saying I'll never use it again, but I think that I have a few different ones that I might finish with. Having just a choice of finishing questions, so I can go with who I can ask a better question to who I'm talking to. I think it's just more fun. So that's what I have to share with you guys, is that it's gone, but we've had about 70 guests on the show. So we've asked that question 70 times. More than half of the guests have given us either the same exact answer or something really, really close. And the big way that people believe that you can suck less at jiu-jitsu is to be consistent. Consistency was just always the top answer. How do you suck less? You just keep training. How do you suck less? You just stay on the mat. So how do you develop consistency? How do you develop healthy habits? I think that's what we're going to go through today. We're just going to talk about just some different tips, some different habits that are really, really important to develop. And then first, we're going to discuss why it's hard. I think that is really one of the things that people need to understand. It's not hard for everybody. There is a certain personality type that's crazy that can say, I want to be more flexible. And within like 2 months, they can do the splits, and they weren't even close to being able to do it before that. That's not who we're talking to. We're not talking to people that have no trouble with building habits, right? Um, we're talking to people, a lot of times, the people that struggle most to build healthy habits are people that someone you would call probably emotional. Like, oh yeah, Brad, he's emotional. He's an emotional guy. That would be somebody who you would assume probably is not good at creating healthy habits. And the reason being is because people that are emotional, we all experience emotions, right? Or probably all of us, most of us experience emotions. Um, but someone who we would categorize usually as emotional, they experience emotion and they use that as their deciding factor on how life is and how and what they're going to do in their life. And so you see that very often. And this is not this is a personality type. This isn't someone who is a bad person because of this, but that's going to be a big tendency you're going to see with people that struggle with habits. And we all probably have that tendency, or most of us have that tendency. I know I do. That, the days that I don't, I feel good most days. The days that I don't, though, those are the days that you battle with your habits, that you battle with consistency. And so I have just a few things that I've been doing that have really helped me, and I wanted to share them with you guys. So the first thing to remember is that your emotions aren't always honest. Yes, you are experiencing your emotion. So if you are sad, you are experiencing that. That doesn't, so someone saying, like, what do you have to be sad about? Right? That's ignorant. You are sad. Okay. But because you are sad does not mean you are incapable. Because you're happy doesn't mean that you are capable, right? Your emotion does not, it doesn't always, it's not always honest. It's not always what is truth. And a lot of times we feel like that. A lot of times we feel like I'm angry at this person. And since I'm feeling anger, that means it is warranted. That means I am allowed to feel this anger. That means that I'm allowed to lash out at this person because they made me angry. Uh, Not the best way to live. Um, I'm not trying to say that it's hard. It's always hard to discuss things like this because they kind of start to go hand in hand with mental health. But just the big thing I want to push, the big thing I want you guys to keep in mind is that your emotions lie. That little voice that you have loves to lie to you. And that is one of the biggest enemies of consistency. And something my dad has always said is one of my favorite quotes. My dad has a million quotes. He's a dad. Something he always says is the secret to your success is in your daily routine. And that's what I really wanted to talk to you guys about is how to create a daily routine. Nobody tells you that. Everyone says, oh yeah, you should be stretching for jujitsu every day, and you should be doing this, and you should be lifting, and you can, but no one tells you how. It's hard to do that, especially if you have a 9 to 5, or especially if there are a lot of guys at my gym that work more than 9 to 5. I have guys that are trying to be competitors that work 60 hours a week. And that's very, very hard. You have to be very disciplined to do that. And so, something that I think is really important when it comes to healthy habits and daily routine. And we'll talk more about what those habits are and what they can be and stuff in just a little bit, but just how to create them. This is something I stole from Sean Williams. I really, really like some of the stuff that I think it's in one of his, actually, I think it's one of his free books. I think he might only have one free book. It's like 12 secrets or 12 tips. I'll make sure to link it in the description because I do not remember it off the top of my head. But something he talks about, or something he is really helpful with, is this calendar that you can create. And I stole this idea and I've been using it for a while now. And man, it has helped me with consistency more than anything else. So you create a calendar and you create the habits that you would like to develop. And if you're looking for what habits to develop, we'll talk about that in a second. But I'll give you an example of some of my habits that I like to have. So live training is obviously something that I want to do, but I don't struggle with live training. It's still something that I keep on the calendar though. Mental training, that is something that I struggle with more. It's harder for me to motivate myself to watch video, to watch competition footage, to engage in jujitsu with my mind when I'm not at the gym. And I'm sure that part of that has to do with that jujitsu is my job, it's my podcast, it's my online business, it's everything, right? And so sometimes it's nice to not think about jujitsu, but creating a healthy habit of mental training is important to me. Yoga is something else. I have certain injuries that get worse and worse and worse because I'm losing flexibility as I age. It's not excessive. I'm not like, oh, I can't touch my toes anymore. I'm still very flexible, but I've noticed that I've lost a lot of flexibility. I think that has been a cause of the rib injuries that I've experienced. So creating the habit of doing yoga. And I'm trying to look at my calendar. Oh, lifting, bike riding. What else? Oh, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu learning. I think that is important. You shouldn't just only learn Jiu-Jitsu. I like to do a lot of learning about business. Hey, straight up with you guys. Nobody's working and everybody's in a lot of debt. There's going to be some type of economic turn at some point, maybe in 2 weeks, maybe in 2 years. Learn financial literacy. If you guys don't know what financial literacy is, Robert Kiyosaki has good stuff on that. This is a jiu-jitsu podcast though. But learning things that aren't jiu-jitsu are really important. And that's something that would be beneficial for you to start to learn about is some financial literacy. Just anything not jiu-jitsu, a good start to your day. Everyone has different ways that they like to start their day. For me, I like to start my day with prayer. That is my morning routine. But what you do is you put down your list. I think on my list, I have like 10 things on my list that I like to do for my calendar. And each one of them has their own abbreviation. And so each day, what I try to do, I have certain things that I'm going to try to hit every single day. For me, I wake up and I pray in the morning. That is something I try to hit every single day. I notice a huge difference in how my day goes when I do that. And so that's an everyday thing. Really, that is on my list right now. That is the only everyday thing that I have. Then I I try to get 3 more of the habits, like learning Portuguese is one of the habits that I'm trying to create. That's been like the hardest one for me because, I just hate Brazilian people. No, just kidding. It's just that's a hard habit for me to create. And so I create these rules. So I have certain things that are every day that have to be hit every day. I have a certain number of things that I have to hit every day. My number is 4. I try to do 4 of the 10 habits that I'm trying to create. Then the other stipulation, these are the things that I put in mind. You can make your own rules to this. That's what's fun about it. Something else I do on my calendar is I try to hit all 10 things at least once throughout the week. If I go through enough times and I'm not hitting something, most likely I'm never going to be able to create that as a habit. I need to change my perspective on how I'm looking at it as a habit. For example, if I am not studying Portuguese ever, and I'm like, man, this sucks. I never can hit this. It's really hard for me to hit this or whatever. And should be easy for me to just pull up Duolingo on my phone. I just don't do it. Well, most likely that means that either I don't want to learn Portuguese that bad, or that I'm taking the wrong approach to it. So I look at that goal of learning Portuguese and maybe I say, okay, well, I will, they have certain apps that you can do, like basically a Zoom call with a teacher, and it's not very expensive. And I could switch to that, right? That would give me a little more motivation because I'd have a scheduled time that I have to do it. So for our daily routine, the big thing I wanted to make sure to stress, your daily routine doesn't have to be rigid. It can be kind of like how I've been trying to make mine. It can be, these are the things that I like to hit, and I will hit a few of them each day. And that can be, it doesn't get as stale. I think I'm not somebody who could wake up and do the exact same thing every single day over and over and over. It's just, it's one, sometimes you don't have a lift in you. You know, you want to, you're supposed to lift that day and you just don't have it. And that happens sometimes. And so having that and saying, okay, well, I'm going to replace my lift with a different healthy habit that I'm trying to develop, I think can be really, really good. And so now I just want to look at some of the biggest habits that I think you should develop for jujitsu. One is without a doubt, and this is not live training jujitsu. If that's something, if you struggle with like not going to class, yes, that is obviously the habit that you should focus on. But I feel like that is less of a struggle for most people. Some people do struggle with it. And that usually has to do with more like time, right? If you're listening to this podcast and you don't get to train enough, most likely that has to do with like time, whether it's too far, the gym is too far from you or whatever. That is how you that is how you start to develop that. But that's tough, right? Because if you're working 80 hours, you don't have the ability to train. Well, maybe you need to look at the goal, kind of the same way. And I was just talking about Portuguese. And so you say, okay, I'm not hitting live training enough. I'm not getting enough live rounds. Well, maybe I need to tweak my schedule. I need to buy some mats at home and train more with one of my friends. That way I can stay more engaged. I can get more training in that way. And I am not losing 2 hours out of my day or 3 hours out of my day if you have a long drive, right, to go to the gym. And you're only losing 30, 45 minutes out of your day. That's something that I did when I was a purple belt. And I think that it was a huge, obviously, there was a big dip in my progression in jiu-jitsu when I went from always having a coach there to help me to then never having a coach. But I think it forced me to develop certain skills when it comes to learning jiu-jitsu that most other people didn't have to develop. But training on your own, if you are struggling with live training, might be the best answer if it's a time thing, which usually it is. But the other habits are the ones I want to talk about. What are the other important habits that you should have with jiu-jitsu? I really think everyone should have some type of flexibility routine. I think flexibility reduces the risk of injury so much. If you go to a physical therapist, they're going to have you do certain exercises or something. So I injure my shoulder, right? They're going to always have you do certain exercises, certain movements, but they do two things. And this is it. They try to get that muscle more, or that joint more flexible. And then they try to strengthen your range of motion that you've created in that joint. Those are the two things that you deal with at physical therapy. You know, it's not super complex. So we can prep ourselves by trying to stay flexible. You don't have to do a ridiculous yoga routine, right? But flexibility is important. I think you look at kind of what you struggle with flexibility wise too, and that's what you focus on. And I really think that will reduce so much injury. For me, I know that's why it's been really important to me. I'm somebody who's more naturally flexible, but I have been dealing with a lot of injuries over the last year. And I really think most of them have to do with lack of flexibility or losing flexibility, still doing the same movements that I've always done, but not being as flexible for those movements. And that has caused injury. And so starting to get into yoga again is really, really good habit. It doesn't have to be yoga, just any type of flexibility stuff. And if you don't know where to start, there is so much good stuff on YouTube. I always just kind of look at what I want to flex or what I want to gain flexibility in, hip yoga routine. And there's probably like a ton of 20-minute videos that you can do. Again, you do it once a week, put it on your list, put it on your calendar, make sure you're checking it off at least whatever, once a week, every 3 days, however you decide, whatever stipulations you want to put on your calendar. I think that is something most people need to do in jiu-jitsu. I think lifting is also something that people should do in jiu-jitsu. And I am bigger on lifting for injury prevention than anything. keeping a very keeping strong in movements to your propensity. I'm not saying that you have to be a certain strength level. Some people just naturally are not going to be as strong as others, but you try to make sure you have strength in good range of motion. um, I honestly, I'm big on using machines. I really like to use machines for jujitsu guys because of the force curve on like a good piece of equipment versus like, for example, if I'm doing a curl with a dumbbell, you think about what angles the weight moves. It's not just moving straight up and down, which is what gravity is doing. Gravity is trying to go straight up and down. But if I do a curl on like a machine preacher curl, the weights, the stack of weights only moves up and down. Okay. So I should, in theory, get a better range of motion because the weight will be consistent throughout the movement. And that is just, but that's preference. That's not, I wouldn't say like, hey, if you are somebody who really enjoys lifting with free weights, you shouldn't do that. I absolutely don't think so. This is just preference. This is for me. But having a good range of motion is going to prevent so many injuries. I think those are two really important ones. I think mental training, and we're going to dig deeper on mental training than we are on anything else because there's two. I don't know. I don't know if you would consider these. I guess you would consider these habits that you should develop when it comes to mental training. And the first we talk about all the time on the show. The second we don't talk about very often, and so I'll probably ramble on that much longer. But the first is making sure with your training that you have a problem solving mindset. Um, we talk about this all the time on the show that all we're trying to do in jiu-jitsu, all I'm trying to do when I grab a grip, I'm just asking you a question. The question is, what is your response? You have a bunch of different ways that you can respond. If you don't respond to anything, well, then I probably am going to start to ask you another question and another. And your job is to answer, right? You answer when I start to try to pass your guard. You answer that. And then ideally, if you're good enough, you ask me a question. You create a problem for me to solve. And we just do this back and forth. And that is how we do jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is all about problem solving. So if in the gym, I keep getting guillotined, a lot of people like to get frustrated about those things. Oh, I keep getting guillotined. That sucks. It really shouldn't be that big of a deal. The reason is because now you kind of get like a very clear problem to solve. And we don't get that in life very often, right? It's like when you ask your wife, like, hey, what's wrong? And she goes, you wouldn't understand, right? It's like that. You're looking, you don't usually, when we have a problem, it's not simple, like what the problem we're dealing with. We have to figure out what we're even dealing with, right? If I'm getting guillotined a lot, that's a simple problem. The answer doesn't mean it's easy for me to find an answer, but I know what the problem is. The problem is I'm getting guillotined a lot. And so I start to ask myself, what if I just started to tuck my chin more? What if I stopped coming up into the position that I'm getting guillotined from? What if I learned to defend the guillotine better once I get there? You're able to start to solve problems. And that is something that jiu-jitsu will always do, is it will always present you with new problems that you have to solve. So that is a really important mindset of mental training, is looking at what is happening when you're training and saying, hey, these are the questions that I have. Now it's my job to go answer them. And at first, when you're brand new, I think you should probably always just go to your coach and ask. But as you start to progress, even after a year of training, I like to answer a lot of questions of my students with questions, right? Well, what do you think you should do there? Why? Why do you move that way? Why didn't you move this way? And make sure that they are having answers and they're having to solve the problems on their own. If that is, like there are just so many people that I've trained with that only know how to ask an upper belt questions. And eventually, our hope is eventually we're going to be the highest belt on the mat. Eventually, we're going to be the person that has the most knowledge. And so if I never learn how to solve problems on my own, well, I'm going to probably be in bad shape. Now, the second habit when it comes to mental training, and this is, I think, problem solving is an important life, what do you call it? Like, important life habit to have is the ability to problem solve. The second one, and this is probably the most lacking from me, from everybody in the world, and it's engagement. So many people struggle to engage in whatever it is they're doing when they are on the mats, when I am teaching. And bro, I'll be bringing the fire, dropping knowledge bombs on people, great dad jokes, the whole 9 yards. And I'll look out and there'll be guys that are like staring off at the ceiling. There'll be guys that are staring at me and obviously not paying attention. Uh, just engaging, saying, this is what I'm doing for the next hour of jujitsu. I am going to engage. I'm going to be here. I'm not thinking about texting my girlfriend. I'm not thinking about what's for dinner tonight. I'm not thinking about any of that. I am trying to progress in jujitsu. If you could develop engagement, I'll give you a few tips on it. If you could develop just engaging, one, relationship wise, it will really be helpful for you. Trust me, there are many times that my wife comes home and says, hey, babe, did you do dot, 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 that thing that I asked you? And I'm like, hey, you didn't ask me that. And she's like, yeah, you literally said, oh, yeah, I'll do that. And then she said, I asked you, are you sure you're listening? And then while still staring at your phone, you go, oh, yeah. And I wasn't listening. I wasn't engaged. There's a funny bit on How I Met Your Mother where Barney finds out that he can stay in a conversation with the group by not paying attention and just randomly throwing out the names of, I think it's like 80s black sitcoms. And so they'll say something will be like, what's happening? Or, what a great show. Let's just take a second to appreciate that. Okay, I'm glad it's over. So engaging. See how I just went off there? Just thinking about How I Met Your Mother. I wasn't even thinking about jujitsu anymore. It is so easy to lose engagement. We all do it too. It's not like, I think it's always told to us that, like, yeah, young people, they don't pay attention and they're always on their phones. And it ain't like that anymore, man. When I go pick up my parents, who my dad's 61, and I don't know how old my mom is. She's Asian. She looks 20. But like when I pick them up for dinner, I'll ask them a question and they'll be like in the back seat. And my wife and I will just laugh because they're both looking down at their phones and they don't even hear the question. It's not just young people. We all struggle with being engaged. You might be listening to this podcast right now while trying to do something that actually requires your attention. Like if you're doing homework and you're listening to this podcast, I'm not going to be the guy that's helping you solve your math problems right now. You need to engage. And so I would just give you a few tips, like leave you with a few tips on developing better engagement. The reason we didn't do as much on problem solving is because the last 98 episodes have pretty much been about learning to be a better problem solver. But learning to engage, creating a routine. We've talked about anchors before. Creating some anchors of, I'm going to do this in order to create a mindset of learning. So for me, I like to have certain songs for everything. I have certain songs for like if I'm going to do a podcast and it's a big one, it's someone who I'm nervous about interviewing. I don't do it before everyone. I only do it when I notice that I'm nervous, because usually I feel like I can just jump in and be there and be engaged and enjoy it. But sometimes, you have a big fish and you're like, man, I don't know. I don't deserve to be able to interview this person. I hope I don't ask dumb questions, something like that. So my go to for that is uh, that all my songs are very, very different. So my go to for that, I think, is what is it? It's Killing in the Name, the live version by Rage Against the Machine. It is my go to. That is my anchor for I'm about to do a podcast. I've told you guys before my anchor, and I've explained why. I won't even explain why this time, but my anchor for doing a tournament, like my pre-tournament match, when I start to notice the nervousness and I go, okay, I need to focus. I need to be strong. I need to be positive. I listen to I'm Too Sexy by Said Right Fred. Uh, we have these different things, like different songs, or for me, my big thing for I'm going to do hard training is I have black coffee. Always have it before hard training, right? You create an anchor, something that tells your head. And this is something I learned from my dad when I was like 6 years old, and we would lift weights in our garage and listen to Appetite for Destruction, the album by Guns N' Roses. Don't tell my mom. She would not have been happy about me listening to Guns N' Roses at 6 years old. But I remember my dad saying, well, you've got to have your music for lifting. You've got to have your song for this. You've got to have your food for this. And so going into each practice with the same routine, even if that routine is sitting in your car for a minute before practice and taking a few breaths, just something that tells your mind, okay, I know we just messed around at work for 8 hours. I know that we weren't fully engaged there. I know that we weren't fully engaged at all today. But now the job is to learn jujitsu. The job is to progress. Just going in with the mindset of engagement, learning to engage is one of the healthiest habits that you can develop, is just to be in the moment. Somebody, I just like to reference older podcasts as we get farther into the show, but my interview with Huron Gracie, if you want to talk about just being engaged, that was like the best interview for it. And I'll make sure to link that below for you guys, or link that in the description for you guys. And man, I think that's pretty much all I have for you guys. Hope you guys were engaged in this one. Hope it was enjoyable and is helpful for you guys to create some healthy habits. Again, I will make sure to link below, link in the description, the Sean Williams free ebook that I was talking about, where I talk about the calendar. He actually has a lot of tips on even creating what we were just talking about, creating some anchors right before you train so you can be engaged and have really good training. It's a really good read and it's really simple. And so that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. I am so excited to show you guys episode 100 next week, and to just continue to grow the podcast with you guys. I really am so thankful for all of you who listen, especially all of you who have listened since the beginning. It's really cool that we're 100 episodes in. It's really cool that I'm in talks with different companies about sponsorships, and I really just can't thank you guys enough. And I know you guys are going to love episode 100. That's all I have for you guys today. Hope today's episode helps you suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu.